In this video we'll show you how we can use Dolphin 3D CAM to import an IGES file and machine some 2D shapes. So this is the 3D system, so let's import our IGES file. So that is the file that's been imported. Couple of things we need to do first of all is to set up the part and the datum. So to do that we go into the milling tab and use setup. This will set our tool change position, the post processor that we want to use, and the name and location of the output file. We can then use set origin to set where we want the XYZ datum position to be for machining. In this case we'll have midpoint in X and Y and the maximum in Z. So that moves the model such that the top face is Z0. As you move the cursor over the mouse it highlights the model. For 2D machining we need to create sketches, and to do that we need to extract the data from a face. So to extract faces we right click the mouse and say pick faces. As we hover the mouse over the model you can see how it highlights the individual faces. Right click to say make a sketch from the face, and in the objects window here we now have a sketch entity that contains all of the features of that top face. So we need to split that down, so we go in right click and say split the sketch. So we've now got a number of sketches which we can do some machining on. Often when you import an IGES file you're not sure about the sizes, so we can use the dimension function. So if we go into the Z view and then dimensioning, and then we'll choose the dimensioning in the Z axis only, and we'll switch on that so we know that that is 6 millimeters. If we want to have exact dimensioning then we can switch on the selection filters here, and then when we create a dimension it will lock onto the geometry. So we know the depth of the part. The dimensions are now objects in the tree. If we want to delete them we can simply highlight them, right click and say delete items. So we've got those sketches created, so now we can do some machining on them. One thing I do need to do though is we've got a sketch in the bottom face here, and I need to create a further sketch for the small of the two circles. So if I right click the mouse, pick faces and make a sketch from the face, so I've now got a sketch which represents those two entities. Right click to split it, so I've now got a smaller one and a larger one. So if I go into the milling tab here I can choose some of the machining options from this toolbar, but if I've got the sketch highlighted in the objects tree here I can right click the mouse and say create a new boxing operation. So we'll set the step over. I'm going to use a 6 millimeter tool here, so I'll have the step over as half of that. The material allowance is, if I need to use a finishing pass then I would leave that amount of material on, and then I can use a profiling operation to get rid of it. But in this case we'll just set that to 0. Choose the tool we're going to use. We're going to use a 6 millimeter end mill. The clearance plane is a position above Z0 where it's clear of any clamps or fixturing, where it's safe to rapid. The feed change plane is above Z0 where the tool will change from rapid into a feed rate. The depth is how deep I want to go, and the step down is the number of passes in the Z axis. If I need it to go past the bottom of the feature then I can add a through depth onto that. So if we click OK to accept the defaults there, so that produces the toolpath based on that part. Now if you make a mistake or you don't get the right values put in there, then you simply double click the part in the objects tree and change it. So in this case I want to set my final depth to -5, and then it automatically recalculates the part. So now I can use the smaller of the two circles, right click, new pocketing operation, leave all those defaults as they are, but this time my depth will be -6 and my step down will be 0 because I've only got 1mm to take off there. So that's created the path for the two bosses. Now I can use the same tool or a different tool for the two ob rounds. So if I select those from the objects tree here, right click, new pocketing operation. This time I will leave a finishing allowance on, and then I'll show you how we use the profiling operation to remove that. We'll stick with the 6mm tool. The depth is -6, and again my step down will be 1. So that machines that pocket. Now we choose the next one, right click, new pocketing operation, and because this dialog is populated with all the defaults from the previous operation, I can just click OK to accept them. So that does that. Now I can go back to sketch 3, and this time I'll use a profiling operation. So I'll cut round on the inside of there. The roll radius will produce an arc approach and an arc runoff, such that I don't get any cutter marks when I'm producing the finishing pass, so this will need to be quite small. I'm sticking with that tool, and the depth is the same, but this time the step down will be 0 because I want a single pass. That's produced that, so now I do the same thing on the other sketch. All the defaults can remain the same, so that machines the finishing pass on that other pocket there. So now we want to do the drill holes, so let's get back to our XY view. And to create sequence of drilling operations, I need a series of points. So if I go into geometry and I create the points, but I want to snap to the center of the circle, and again just check that your selection filter is set to arc and circle, and then when you click on the circle, and there we are. So that creates the points of the circles, and I've got an extra one which I don't need, which is that one, so if I just delete that out. Okay, so I've got those 4 points there. If I group them together, right click and say a new drilling operation, choose the type of operation I want. Let's have a peck drill, choose the tool, which in this case will be a 2.5mm tool, the depth, if we want to go through, then we can set the depth through, and this is the size of the pecs, 2mm. Okay, so that's produced the drilling operation there. Now we probably want to go around the outside of the shape, so choose that sketch, which is sketch number 2, right click, new profiling operation. So we're cutting around the outside. We're going to have a nice roll radius. We'll choose the tool, this time it will be a 10mm end mill. We'll go down to -6, and we'll take a 2mm step down. If we wanted to leave a finishing allowance on there, we can do that. So that machines around the outside of there, and now we'll do a further operation on there, remove the excess, and the last thing which I didn't do, which was to change the step down to 0. So when you make a change to any of these machining operations here, then the toolpath is automatically calculated for you. So let's save that away. I'll save as, and I'll call that plate 3, and then we can take that through and run the machine tool simulator. We can leave the defaults as they are, click on Simulate. So that loads the machine tool simulator with two basic views of how we view the part. We can either have a workpiece focus, which just shows us the tool and the stock material, or we can have the machine focus, which shows us the complete machine tool and its housing and everything else. But in either instance, we use the video controls at the top here to control the playback of the simulation. Okay, so that's the simulation of that part. We can close that window, exit that back to the CAM system, and then the last thing would be to post-process, and that tells us that that file has been produced and that's ready to be taken to your controller and machined.